astronaut, presenting 1985's Ronald Dusty Rudat, or is that Tater? Here to clear up all the confusion are your hosts, Steve, Paul, and Rob. Yes. Welcome to episode 322 of GI Joburg, where we are focusing on a much beloved toy. In this episode, it's Dusty, 1985.
Isn't it Tadur?
Tadur, Rudat,
Tater.
It's a hotbed of confusion, but we're going to talk
Tater
about
tots.
it in depth. Why are we talking about Dusty? I mean, we spoke about Snake Eyes last time on our toy focus, and we've typically gone for heavy hitter vehicles in these toy-focused episodes. But Dusty, I don't know. I don't want to answer for you. Rob, you were the one who came up with this suggestion offline, and I was like,
absolutely
let's run with it.
Like, what is Rob doing that day? Well, Rob was going through his Joes because he was like, because my Joes all actually live in this gigantic backpack in bags. I'm very old school and very childish in the way that I keep my Joes. They're literally in a giant bag inside.
Backpack.
They're not
so
organized.
you're ready to have a sleepover at my place.
Exactly. I'm always ready to go. My entire joke
grab bag.
It's ready to get going. So I was just wandering through my Joes, kind of like, what Joes do I have? And like, he just caught my eye. I was like, damn, I actually own Dusty. I completely forgotten. So I started looking like, ooh, the cool equipment he has, and looking it up online. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember he has the Famas, a very, weird weapon, but very uniquely looking weapon. I was just like, and like the soft cloth, I was just touching in him. I was like, oh, I'd love to talk about this guy a little bit, Like, he feels very different to a lot of the other Joes I have in this giant backpack. And yeah, it just kind of made me think about some of the times that we featured him as well. He's a very cool character, and the weirdness of his name. There's a lot of stuff that can be said, I think, about Dusty, and it's a very cool sculpt. I think definitely one of the coolest toys, one of the cooler toys that I have. So why not? Inspiration of the moment was just like Dusty, and everyone else was like, yeah, I want to get Dusty.
Rob, you're bang on, man, because you were lured by a very cool and like understated but excellent figure. And then just researching for this podcast episode, I was like, this guy's got an incredible like character, and he gets to show it off in multi-medias.
Yeah,
starting with the cartoon series, actually. It was Pyramid of Darkness, 1985, airing in September, where Dusty gets his first feature in the very first episode of the 5-parter, where he is the second chair on a space shuttle launch up to the GI Joe orbital satellite. Who's the captain? Mutt. But at one point, Mutt's like, I'm checking out the cargo hold. So, Dusty,
you're in charge of the
boy.
Space
Yeah. That's why in the intro up top, I decided to include that he was in fact an astronaut for a time, because, man, oh man, not only does he fly the shuttle, but in the ensuing prisoner sequence that takes place on the GI Joe satellite, where it gets taken over by Fatal Fluffies and Dreadnoks and Zartan, Dusty's the major player. He is the one coming up with all the escape plans. He's the one who manages to intercept transmissions and send them down to the GI Joe forces on Earth, so that they could race to intercept the cubes, the darkness cubes around the world. He's the one who masterminds the zero gravity escape plan to try and get Duke. He's the one who eventually overpowers the Dreadnoks and gets them to, I don't know, foil their own plan by, I don't know, didn't they use the dog whistle to make the Fatal Fluffy shrink down again? It's all very easy at this point.
The whole thing.
But Dusty's the man. Duke and the other OGs, they don't do a damn thing.
They got nothing to do. And it's wild because, like,
watch Dusty be cool.
You've built him as like the desert dude, like he is the desert figure. He's the guy who plays in the desert, but you've instantaneously, in his very first appearance, taken him completely out of what you would expect to see him in, which I think is cool, because it kind of does help remind you that the characters don't have to be in the exact environment that they necessarily build as. Like this, he's a specialist in the desert, but he's more than comfortable, floating in space and kind of like fixing, machinery and taking on fatal fluffies. He's just, I can do it all.
Environmentally specific characters, Dusty is far more easily massaged into other environments than, say, Snowjob. I can buy in desert fatigues being in the jungle. I find it less easy to be a guy wearing all white and a parka.
Guys, get my flippers on so I can get through the jungle.
Because it's hot.
All of the animated appearances.
Oh, dude, there's tons of animated appearances. And, I mean, you mentioned, like, some of the Pyramid of Darkness stuff. With him, here he's flexing his air conditioning repairman skills as he connects some kind of bypass to the transmission device inside the satellite, the Cobra satellite, or the satellite, let's say. Joe's satellite is actually.
So someone read that file card, like they saw them, like, yep, he's tech savvy.
He's a tech guy, and he, as Steve mentioned as well, he does a lot of very desert trooper like things. I mean, his AG training, his anti-gravity training is up to snuff in Pyramid of Darkness, which is pretty cool. But I want to talk about, like, for me, what was, and I'm scared I'm going to get to the juice of this whole thing now, but for me, the most, like, the time that when I noticed Dusty, like, I've always seen him as a figure, and it's always been cool that he's had his little Havelock thing and whatever's. But when he became a real character for me was in the Traitor. And that is
by Buzz Dixon.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we as GI Joburg definitely need to cover. We need to cover this two-parter because it's really, really great, and it's often forgotten about. Even I forgot. I had to watch it again just to get up to snuff with it. But we have Dusty doing some pretty cool stuff, and also just wanted to mention, like, on screen, it's weird how he kind of looks a bit like Duke. With the Havelock, but not always, because you got this shot. Steve had put up this shot earlier, and he doesn't look as Dukish now. So it's odd. Like, they definitely had to, like, figure out a few things with the character design. I don't know. Anyway, in the Traitor, if you guys haven't seen it before, I don't want to spoil it too much, but Dusty's mom is ill, and he really needs money for her treatment. And so he's, kind of like a little desperate. So he ends up striking a deal with these bad boys, with the twins, Emmett and Tomax, and to sort of sell some secrets, because GI Joe has this new armor spray thing to make their weapons invulnerable, and Cobra wants access to that, and so they're willing to kind of co-opt Dusty to get that stuff. And what ends up happening is Dusty is sort of involved in this plot, and you got Flint and Duke, and you're not sure who's setting who up, and they're watching Dusty, and they set up some bait for Dusty to take. And so now we see Dusty in this real, like, sort of moral battle, and that was really great to see, because not only, like, they could have taken any GI Joe, but it was interesting that they chose Dusty, not because he's a particularly special character. What do I mean by special? He's not special in that he's not a Snake Eyes or a Duke or something like that. He's a GI Joe that is a desert guy. So they felt, well, let's maybe make him the moral center of things. Let's see if we can figure out his ethics. Where does he stand, and how does a Joe operate when they're being tempted with tragedy, and or when they're being threatened by tragedy and tempted by the hand of Cobra. And that was really cool to see.
Why do you suppose they settled on Dusty? Question for the class. Of all the members of the Joe team, why Dusty? To give this amount of depth and backstory to?
He was probably one of the more interesting, or at least more, like, regular looking guys from 1985. I mean, 1985 also had Bazooka.
An absolute superstar figure, but very much a kind of a grunt, a nameless, faceless troop that you could, I don't know, impose or just add a lot more character to him without him being a caricature. There's so many shows that are like comic relief. the Alpine Bazooka quick kick trio make up a very like they're cliches. You needed a kind
Yes.
of really just an everyman, and he was the everyman of that 1985 stellar, superstar year.
I'm gonna agree with you on that one.
His
Yeah,
outfit
Rob?
also suggests he's more professional to a degree, because I mean he has a lot more kind of like little things on it that kind of suggest military more than I think some of the other guys do from that year.
Mm.
I mean, yes, you have
Very
Flint,
much the
who,
straight man.
Yeah, very,
The
very much
other
straight man
military
looking
guy from that year would be Footloose, but
Yeah.
in the
his
cartoon they
sort of
made Footloose
coveralls
into a
and stuff.
bit of a comic relief
Surfer
himself.
dude.
He was the
They made him
surfer dude. He had all the
Michelangelo.
lines, and it's nice that in Hearts and Cannons, another classic episode, they paired them up. Dusty being the straight man to Footloose's comic relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Hey
think
man, I'm Dr. Footloose. That's Dusty. He's just an intern.
such a cool line. I think I think to add to all of that as well is that Dusty is a bit of a cipher, because all the other characters, like you just did Footloose now, and people know you're talking about Footloose, and you can do Duke and you can do Stalker, but how do you do a Dusty? Like, how do you do a quick impression of Dusty to inform people that you are Dusty without telling them you're Dusty? And so he's very much a cipher. He's very much a character I think the viewers can put themselves into. And
did it ever seem strange to you that in the cartoon they chose a kind of a good old boy accent? I mean, if his birthplace was
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, it seems a bit out of character that he's got a very sort of southern gentleman's drawl.
that only sort of got to me when I was doing research for the episode, because before then it was just another American accent for me, not to sound like dismissive or anything. And I didn't care about Dusty that much that I thought about where he comes from, if that makes sense. So only when I was doing the research for this did I go, oh wait, he's from Nevada, and then I heard him speak and I'm like, that's
If
weird.
I'm to answer my own question, I think that dialect just places him as a kind of a gentleman, a little bit more old-fashioned, and it plays into, once again, his kind of like, he's professional, he's the straight man to the other sort of more wild characters on the roster, the shipwrecks. We already spoke about the quick kick Alpine Bazooka trio. So yeah, Dusty's this lovely distinction, this juxtaposition with those guys. So, Vegas be damned, he speaks Southern, which is great.
Also-
At one point, doesn't he have like some like rap that he does in Pyramid of Darkness?
Oh,
I think I had to
no.
step out while that was playing, but like he definitely sings a song and like turns the Fatal Fluffies' heads. They're like, what the hell is that guy doing?
Wow. Also, I feel like Dusty has the distinction of being one of the few GI Joes that's not mind controlled or gassed or anything, that actually goes into conflict with another GI Joe.
Ah.
So in this case, it's Shipwreck versus Dusty during the Traitor. Shipwreck is actually coming in to like, lay on some hurt because he's all like, you're a traitor, blah, blah, blah. And I like that they did this with the scene, because you got Shipwreck, who's always considered a bit of a goof off and all that. And now we realize that Shipwreck's actually very much like a GI Joe. He's very loyal to the team. He's very loyal to his buddies, and he's going up against Dusty. And there's very few instances. I can't actually think of one where the GI Joes, other than Wetsuit and Leatherneck, where GI Joes are actually going up against each other, where one isn't mind controlled or an alien or Zartan or something like that. So Dusty's definitely, like seen GI Joe's dangerous side as well, which is pretty cool, which is also kind of distinctive for him. And also has the distinction of us seeing him in his dress uniform as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really, really rad, because when I was going through, when you go through the episode and whatever, and you're kind of watching it, and then I had to do a double take because I was like, wait, is this can't be Hawk? I was like, that's weird. And it was great to see that. And I would love to see like a Super 7 version of this, Dusty, when Super 7 do their O-rings or whatever. I think that would be cool to get the sort of dress suit version of
that's
or
in his
uniform.
court-martial hearing.
Yeah. So that was fun. that was kind of unique. And Dusty has another costume. He's actually got a few costume changes that are notable as well. He's got his civvies. So here he's hatching up the plot with Duke to be not just a double agent, but a triple agent. And he's got his
you gave away the game, Paul. Absolutely.
Oh.
If I was Heart of Gold,
Yeah.
he was not playing on the side of Cobra all along at all. He was just taking their money. My big question for the end of the Traitor is, once everything's revealed and Dusty turns back to the good side and turns against Cobra, do the checks dry up? Who's looking after his mother then? Back to
I don't know.
pathetic health plan. Oh, jeez.
This is bad accounting going on there. She's still getting those checks to this day.
I hope so.
Exactly. But how cool is it that we've got so many like variations of Dusty that we could look forward to in something like Super 7 going forward? I mean, I know this is all speculative and this is all wish listy, but having a Cobra Trooper version of Dusty could be fun. And then, of course, we see him in another great episode called Hearts and Cannons. It's all mysterious. This is not Dusty on screen. This is the leader of the resistance in the desert. But we get to see one of the coolest pair-ups. Yeah.
Totally.
We get to see one of the coolest pair-ups in the Sunbow show. Footloose and Dusty. And it really just does make sense because, yeah, it's just they work so well together and they're kind of like uniform opposites. The one is jungle, the other one's desert, which is great. And notably on the color palette in the Sunbow show, Footloose is green and brown and Dusty is brown and green. So it's kind of like a bit yin and yang. I thought that was quite cute and fun and whatever's. And
it's the Springboks versus the Wallabies.
There you go.
The green and gold and the gold and green.
Hearts and Cannons has a cool, has an interesting plot. Again, Dusty is involved in some kind of weapons technology, but it has an interesting plot in that Dusty and Footloose have to sort of rescue a scientist who is developing weapons technology for Destro, and that weapons technology is like some kind of plasma firing device for their tanks or whatever it's meant to be. It's a whole thing. And at the same time, they are oppressing the native people of the of this desert, the indigenous people of the desert here.
Not Afghanistan.
Not Afghanistan. And so Dusty and Footloose have tasked themselves to go and finish this mission, which was sort of started with, hinted at the beginning of the episode. What I don't like about this episode and why I don't feel that this episode really sells Dusty is that Footloose ends up doing a lot of this kind of stuff you would expect from a guy like Dusty. Yes, Dusty pops out of the sand in a bit of an ambush situation, and yes, he does call a scorpion cute and all that kind of stuff, which is cool because Footloose is obviously a fish out of water, but everything else is so Dusty that Footloose does. And so this is not really a great representation of the character, but an awesome episode and a great buddy episode between the two where you get to really enjoy the two. And Dusty's got the biggest crush on the doctor, on the scientist, which then gets smashed because she is in love with the leader of this. She's more taken by the leader of this rebellious force in the desert, who then gives Dusty and Footloose a medal. So I suppose that could be a fun thing to play out. Again, some more Super 7 character suggestions. The Doctor would be cool. The leader of the desert people would be cool, whose name I can't remember. It's some ridiculous desert wolf man, something. I don't know, whatever the heck it is. This is about Dusty, not about him. But yeah, it was cool to see Dusty doing something very military. And that's another thing that kind of stands out for Dusty's episodes. They are a little bit more military than fantasy, I feel. They are a bit more spy. And I don't know where my image of it is here, and I'm so sorry, folks, but it does tell us that possibly one of the best vehicles to pair Dusty with, other than an ore striker, is a mauler.
Oh yeah, Hearts and Cannons. I mean, it's almost in the title. It's absolutely just selling you a mauler tank. So why the name confusion? Well, Dusty's file name on his file card is Ronald W. Tader. Tader being Rudat spelled backwards. Rudat taken from Ron Rudat, the designer who was responsible for the early GI Joes, including Dusty. However, In the two-parter, The Traitor, written by Buzz Dixon, everyone, including his own mother, calls him Dusty Rudat. Not Ronald Tader, not Ronald Rudat, but Dusty Rudat. The reasons are unclear. His codename, smashed together with the re-reversal of his surname, make for an interesting second name.
Of the
I think it's
shot.
time for Steve's
Sure.
fun fact about Dusty.
Oh,
What's that?
Guys, in the Action Force file cards, a lot of the
Ron
places,
Rudat.
the birthplaces were shifted to more international and varied locations. For instance, the jungle warfare specialist Ricondo had his birthplace shifted to the arts capital of Australia, Melbourne. Not the place you'd expect a survivalist to come from. Dusty, however, he was born in Alice Springs in Australia. Now, that is as dusty and as rural as you can get. That's where, I mean, if you remember Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, that's where they're driving the bus to. So it's desolate, if you can imagine that. And for 1,000 GI Joburg points, gentlemen, where do you suppose Outback was born?
Outback. Oh, probably Townsville, Australia.
That would be great.
You want to take a swipe?
I don't know. They probably did something ridiculous like Sydney.
Really stupid. Tasmania.
I'm going to have to keep that 1,000 GI Joburg points to myself because Outback was born in Scotland.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, that track
So
the red hair.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
Ridiculous.
The one character that you could actually have legitimately made Australian. It's in his name.
So,
Yeah.
Dusty's comic book appearances kicked off in 1987, a full 2 years after the figure had been out, and a full almost 2 years, well, 1.5 years since his debut in Pyramid of Darkness. But it was in issue 58 of the Marvel Comics where he pairs up with Mainframe, once again, very much a buddy character. Which is a wonderful thing to see him. He's always got a pal, it seems. The name of the issue was Desperate Moves.
You're a computer nerd.
Yeah, exactly. They take on a
yes.
young sort of fighter called Rashid as a third member of their company. He's a guide, and he has no respect for Mainframe. But Dusty knows a thing or two about Mainframe. He's like, lay off the guy. He's earned his stripes. Anyway, it showcases Dusty being an absolute badass because as night falls, they become encircled by bandits. Dusty goes off into the desert on his own. You just see a bunch of explosions, and then he comes staggering back with all their weapons. And he's like, yeah, it's chilled. Go back to sleep.
Easy.
But one of the best lines, and possibly like something that is like stalker level philosophical, comes right at the end. And this almost feels like Larry Hama talking to us directly. And this is his philosophy about what it means to be a soldier. That a soldier only wins by surviving. These are words spoken by Dusty to the young Rashid, saying like, politics be damned, nothing else is important. Like, the only way a soldier wins is by living to fight another day. Like, there's no... all notions of victory are hollow. Like, the most important thing to any boots on the ground grunt isn't what's happening above them in the clouds of bureaucratics and political nation maneuverings. It's basically comes down to like, did you survive to fight another day? And that's powerful stuff. Once again, from an absolute grunt in his debut issue. But a lovely sentiment, I'd say.
Well, he certainly had to survive. I mean, he had to survive 2 years before, sort of he appeared in the comic books. So he finally made it to a place where Larry was like, yeah, let's give this line to this guy.
Yeah.
Why finally put him in my comic?
But he gave Dusty some other shine. I mean, in a fantastic Special Missions issue, number 13, issue 13, Dusty is, in fact, the commander of that issue. He's leading Outback and 2 probationary Joes, Lightfoot and Mangler. They're in the desert. They're trying to locate and destroy a weapons cache before it falls into the wrong hands. And things go wrong. They get captured. Lightfoot gets tortured. They give up the location of the weapons cache, but they are released by a sympathetic officer of the enemies, and then told, "Here's a bit of water. If you march that way, you'll get to the sea. Don't try and follow us. You'll never make it because you've only been rationed with this much water." Dusty's like, "Hell no! We're gonna run all night, camp down by day, conserve water, and we're gonna complete the mission." And let me just say, in that issue, Dusty is not only a badass, but he makes Outback look like a chump because he picks up, while they're running at night, he picks up some desert reptiles for them to eat while they camp out by day. And Outback, of all people, kind of like, he whinges about it. He's like, "I don't want to eat that." Outback. So if ever you're wondering, like, who's the greatest survivalist, Dusty or Outback, it's Dusty, baby.
It's Dusty. He'll eat anything.
Yep. And I mean, there are some pretty severe command decisions Dusty has to make in that issue. If you haven't read it, issue 13, Special Missions, yeah. Guys, iceberg theory. This character is better than you remember, I think. It's subtle. It might slip under your radar, but it's there. One more thing that I'd like to bring out, which comes from I think the first mention of it was actually in his included bio. So this is information that the file card, if it was Larry's full notes, I imagine, would contain this information, but file cards are always truncated. Now, Dusty had a bio inserted into the pages of the issue. I think it was, I forget. Issue, it's the one where the stealth fighter pilot flies into the Emirate of Benzine, and I'll get the name. It's 115, Counting Coop. In any case, the bio goes on to mention that Dusty is a linguist. He is fluent in Arabic and Hebrew, and conversant in Kazakh and Khalkha, which is an Eastern Mongolian language, which makes him an expert in, 5 languages essentially, makes him an expert linguist, a translator, and a very, very sharp fella. Once again, it's going to slip by you. If you don't really take notice of this character, you don't realize exactly how bloody good he is. And I got a little bit miffed when, in the pages of the IDW run with Larry Hama at the helm, they introduce a character called Mongoose, who is G.I. Joe's new sort of desert language specialist. And the Joes all are returning back from a mission in the desert, and they're like, "Oh, where were you, man? We could have done with a translator on that one." And in the back of mine, I'm thinking, like, have you forgotten about Dusty? Dusty's the man. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't
you
have a
already
mongoose
have this
figure.
guy on your team.
Mm-hmm.
You're repeating yourself now.
What's and also something that's interesting about, like, if you take a somebody like Dusty who is a polyglot, for example, and he knows those languages, he might not know more than that, but he can pick up pieces of languages that are similar to those. So he's even better. Like, so I mean, if he has to do like travel through like some hectic area, and he knows he's going to run into like maybe like tribes, like wandering tribes of guys or whatever, he can pick up on their language. He can pick up if they're a threat to him or not, as well, based on their conversations with each other. And that's kind of a cool thing. And in a smart way, Dusty, maybe that's Dusty's magic. Maybe it wasn't intended this way, but Dusty's magic is also that it's evolved, and also that we are underestimating, not you and us and whatever's here in this episode, but we do underestimate Dusty, and maybe that's his superpower, that people do underestimate him.
Although the desert may seem like a quiet, barren territory to many others, it speaks volumes to Dusty. Most Joes wouldn't even consider braving the dust storms, snakes, scorpions, blistering hot days, and freezing cold nights of a desert mission unless old Dusty was on it. Ever the survivalist, Dusty can scrounge up and eat a meal of snakes and lizards in the most arid terrain, if need be. He can track and sneak up on an enemy party as if he were the sand itself. Guys, this guy sets up a long-running trope in G.I. Joe that environmental specific characters treat that environment as their home. You see it with the Master, who uses language like, who's walking through my swamp, disturbing my green dreams. And you see it in issue 100 of G.I. Joe, where Cobra is trying to infiltrate the pit in Utah once again, and Dusty says the words like, somebody's out there in my desert. Something to that effect. So he takes ownership of that environment, which is a very cool thing and a necessary
Very
thing.
animal-like.
One guy
Yeah.
who takes that job absolutely seriously. And when he isn't on mission, he's very much like Pit 3 security detail, like essential. You'll often find him there.
Yeah. Actually, that's something that's quite notable about him as well. He's in the current run of the ARAL line, which is fun. I mean, briefly for like 2 seconds, but at least he makes some FaceTime, you know, and he gets a line. So
He says something. Oh my goodness!
We have to talk a little bit about the death of Sneak Peek, the first time Sneak Peek dies. Because it turns out Dusty and Sneak Peek were pals. They spent a Christmas together at least once. Maybe this is some way we can weave the comic book and cartoon together, because Dusty's mother was sick, it was less likely that he'd be able to spend Christmas with her. Maybe she insisted that he go and have, a sort of orphan's Christmas with a family. That's just my headcanon. So Sneak Peek spends that Christmas with Dusty spends that Christmas with Sneak Peek's folks, has a heartwarming conversation with Sneak Peek's mother. Just a kind of a slightly macabre exchange where she's like, my brother never came home from Nam. He was listed as MIA. It drove my mother crazy. Don't let that happen to my boy. Bring him home. No matter what happens, bring him home. These are words that reverberate in Dusty's mind, because when Sneak Peek gets hit, even though it puts Dusty in direct danger and goes against Stalker's orders, Dusty defies them, picks up the prone Sneak Peek, and keeps on going. With Sneak Peek slung over him, blasts into the Cobra position, and they win the day. Sneak Peek, of course, does not make it. I mean, he gets carried all the way back to the G.I. Joe's forward operating base. Stretcher is about to examine the body, and he's like, Dusty, this man's been dead for hours. And Dusty's like, well, I promised his mom that I wouldn't leave him behind. Chilling stuff, but once again, adds incredible layers of character to this otherwise everyman. A lot of pathos. So yeah, not only fantastic appearances in the cartoon, but in the comic book as well. Shall we talk about the Plastic Boys?
They treated him well. They treated him so well.
Fantastic time. Dusty.
Dusty. We all have him. That's why we're talking about him.
Jean-Claude Van Dusty.
Where is everyone's Dusty from? Rob, do you want to kick it off?
I actually have no idea where mine comes from.
You're about to find out.
I'd like to think it comes from you.
Dustin Verberg of the Dragon Fortress.
Dustin Verberg.
We were chatting yonks ago when we had him on the show about Eco Warriors Flint. And I was just mentioning that the one that I always played with was yours, Rob. He's like, so you don't have an Eco Warriors Flint? Well, I'm going to sort you out, Steve.
Of course he would. He loves those shiny guys.
Of course. Dragon Fortress is all about the neon, baby. But he couldn't just send one figure alone. He sent a mess of other stuff, some that I had duplicates of. And so very happily, I sent them on to you in the doubles. One of them was the fantastic 1985 Dusty. So that is the heritage of your figure, Rob.
Well, thank you, Dustin.
Mine comes from the States.
Whoa.
However, it had the most unique reversal. Like this was a figure that I got when I was in the States, actually. So about 2006, I was in my early 20s. That was the first Dusty I ever got, which seems very late to the game, and it is. But the figure always had a sort of a special light shone on it because when I was very young and in potty training, my potty was in a corner of my childhood room. And
You shout out to Dusty.
Yeah, there you go, Dusty, doing the business. That was where I stuck all my Action Force stickers that came in Action Force blister packs. And I think I was past my potty training, so I was about 5 by this point. But I still like to sit on the seat and look at these stickers. And one of them was Dusty's immortal artwork. Beautiful, beautiful. Anyway, so that was my first kind of mental image of the figure. Flash forward to 2006, got him eventually, but he had a manufacturing defect. The elbow, the sort of ABS, not ABS, is it nylon? The joint at the elbow? Anyway, that part was reversed. So he had a very straight left arm. He couldn't bend it.
That's weird.
Eventually, got my current one in Johannesburg, of all places, at Cosmic Comics.
Hey!
And I've loved him intensely ever since. In fact, he's
I remember that day, actually.
Yeah, you will remember it with infamy, Paul. The one day you don't happen to go there, I'm like, you guys got any GI Joe? Well, actually, I got this box full of them. What do you want for it? 250 Rand or something? Paul hates me so much.
Missed out on some real classics.
What else did I want to say about the guy? Yeah, fantastic. I'd done a top 5 O-ring action figure video, and I rewatched it because it's about 6 years old by now. I was wondering if any of those pics were out of date. Dusty came number 4 in my top 10 O-ring figure of all time. So he's earned his spurs. He's earned his right to be in this focus episode. Paul, how about you, brother?
Dude, I can't remember where I got my Dusty from, in all honesty. I remember you getting your Dusty. I don't really remember mine. I feel like mine is a gift from the Bergforce, though. Like, yeah, I don't know. I keep thinking, I'm just not sure exactly who, because we've been very blessed with a lot of cool stuff, but I keep thinking mine comes from AC/DC.
Yeah,
but,
Andrew or Greg Crocott,
yeah.
maybe Jim Godfrey. Who knows, man? Sandwich into
it's
one
of
those.
you amazing,
incredibly
sexy,
generous
wonderful people. But it's worth mentioning that mine is complete. Just don't have the folding stock for the regular Dusty. And my Tiger Force Dusty does come to me by way of, and this I also could be wrong here, because I got a bunch of Tiger Force GI Joes from Dan Szymanski. And I believe this fine fella over here was one of those.
He's got a crotch.
He's got a crotch.
Tiger Force figures are so dickless. Whether it's Lifeline, Outback, Dusty, Duke, Tripwire, just lose their cocks, man.
That's a very nice variation on Dusty, though, I think.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
The Tiger Force one.
You can actually see the skin on his face.
Yeah, the Tiger Force one is interesting. He's got a... I was never that much of a fan of the green initially, but it's something that's grown on me quite a bit. Where I'm like starting to, or where I've started to appreciate it. It's also very like Motu colored as well, because he's very similarly colored to Battle Cat. So he's fun. I'm glad that he's a Tiger Force member because he is so badass. Like, and they could have gone the other way with him. They could have gone like yellow, with him with like green stripes or something. So it's kind of like, I think they made a good call on his design. I do miss the camouflage on the face, though. Like, yes, it's cool that you can see his face, but something about, and I'm sure many of you guys out there will agree with me on this as well. There's something about Dusty not having his face paint that takes a lot away from this toy. He was the first GI Joe to feature the camo cream, camo paint, camo oil, whatever you want to call it.
So it was very much his thing. And you take that away, and he's got a very nondescript face. I mean, that's
It
putting
feels
it
like they
kindly.
took more away than they should have. Because I mean, aren't his eye? I mean, even his eyes aren't painted in there, were they?
Yeah, they were.
In your version,
They are, but they're
Are they?
very light brown. They're very
Oh,
very
yeah.
light brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's almost unnoticeable.
The Tiger Force guy did make an appearance in the comic books. Special Missions 25 features Tiger Force, and yes, I mean, it's pretty much the only time you see the Joes in their Tiger Force uniforms. And Dusty's Tiger Force version is very prominent on a tiger paw.
Oh yeah.
Good choice. Which is very bionic sick colored.
Yeah. And
Guy, I
Lifeline
do wanna-
rides bitch, just like the box art.
I also feel like it's a bit of like I know, knowing that Tiger Force is mostly a repaint line. It is sad that he's missing his rank insignia and his name tags and stuff that come on his
Yeah, he's
uniform.
missing some of the cooler, like small details that Dusty does.
And the little US flag tempo as well. Yeah, it's a thing, right? Like it's like you win some, you lose some with this. But he has a lot of very interesting tempos on his design. I mean, if you look on his arm, he's got his desert paratrooper insignia, or they reckon it's the paratrooper one. They being the research that I did.
Oh yes,
and then
well let's credit them. Good old Form BX257
Yeah.
and Hooded Cobra Commander 788. Essential videos when you want a nice quick burst of review time on this figure. Yes, the tempo on the left is a shield with a palm tree in it. Very appropriate for a desert specialist. Then he's got his jump wings, army jump wings, and he's got the US flag, just with no blue on it, sadly. It would have been really nice if they were able to do a sort of a double layer tempo, but I guess it might have been a bit offset. Or it would have been
I love that it's red. I love that it's red, personally, because it's kind of deserty for me. I think that it's kind of a low-vis kind of vibe.
Yes. Oh, good call.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, unless someone told me that it was supposed to be a US flag, I don't think I would have necessarily known.
Oh, okay.
And Mandela effect, I totally thought that his name was written on those white sort of patches on his breast. But yeah, it's not actually there, not present. You just got to imagine it. I suppose it's the card art that we have to thank for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, kind of cool. Some fun details about him. You can see it in the picture that Steve's showing off right now. But on his elbows, there aren't too many GI Joes that have paint apps on the joint. And on the image that Steven's showing now, a lot of it's scratched, whereas on mine, it's still mostly intact on the one arm. And that is also unique. You don't often see that. You don't often see they'll often just skip the paint detail on that completely.
Because it's such a small piece on the figure, and it is a piece that kind of does see a lot of like movement.
Yeah.
It's understandable why they wouldn't.
And another great feature that is also often missed on Dusty's Havelock is he's got camo detail on his Havelock at the back.
Oh,
he's
yes.
got some print.
Oh, there is a variant. There is a variant that does not possess the.
I would not be surprised. Like yours.
Someone just forgot to kind of like put paint on there.
No, you know what? I think I might have that variant. The one that has no.
No.
No
because
brown.
mine's got the dots on it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I have mine I think is way less noticeable than yours. Like mine is like way. Yeah, I think yours actually has better detailing than mine. And yeah, also my elbows are also kind of basically scratched away. I think there's a little bit left on his left elbow, but it's way more noticeable on yours. It's so cool. Like I just love like the smaller details of the character, like the way that his shirt kind of like tucks under his belt, and you can kind of see where he's kind of like bunched it also on his wrists as well, which I imagine kind of like keep keep moisture in or something and sand out.
It's a still suit. I love that
suit, and his pants are nice and bunched up as well.
The fact that in 1985 the designs were still so strong that like they made allowances for the fact that he is wearing a backpack, and so you're going to see the strap detail
A harness, yeah.
a harness for the backpack.
It's
It only
very
really
cool, 'cause
makes
it's-
sense when he is wearing the backpack, but the fact that it's sculpted to the figure just enhance all the reality that this guy's portraying. He's got a
Yeah.
Fritz-style helmet, which was very much of the time, or still is in use. It's covered with fabric, so it's got nice folds and wrinkles to it. He's got goggles for desert environment. I like the fact that he wears a black undershirt. That seems very
Mm.
special forces. Like, if you imagine Dusty around the base, strolling around with just a black t-shirt on and his camo
Yeah,
pants. That's a cool
that'd
look
be so
right there.
cool.
Yeah.
Also,
Elbow
let's
pads
pull our
picked out as
attention.
well.
Hmm?
Hey, what's
Black-
picked out on him?
The black elbow pads.
Oh
Yeah.
yes,
Not necessary,
Yeah.
but the fact that it's there, love it. You know that he's going to be, rifling his weapon on some rough rocks or sharp, jagged edges, and he's got some adequate padding there. Very cool. What did you want me to draw your attention to, Paulie?
When Footloose and Dusty are jumping out of the transport plane, you
They're
can.
holding
It's
hands.
very blink and you miss it. But Dusty's backpack in the Sunbow episode is actually correct. It's actually his backpack that the toy comes with.
Yes.
You'll see it,
Ah,
which is such a great detail that is shared between the figure and the Sunbow representation. Because often they would sometimes mix those things up. So
or just
Cool
do a
that he has
generic
it.
one, I guess.
Simple,
Also-
but effective. Two canteens,
Yeah.
which are just painting the picture that this guy's a desert specialist. And this backpack did see reuse. Firstly,
Oh
with
yeah,
Red
lots
Dog,
of times.
but then on into the sort of the Joe versus Cobra and like new sculpt era, and not with desert characters. So it never made as much sense. It's like, why aren't you loading it up with grenades or magazines or something? Why has he got two canteens? This is Dusty's backpack, and it should always be Dusty's backpack, even if it is as nondescript a backpack as you're likely to ever see. Come on.
yeah, agreed.
Get it right.
And then another great piece of Dusty's gear is his Famas. And
Mhm.
this is a gun that for me was invisible until I played Metal Gear Solid. And once again, it circled back.
Good one. Paul.
And that's why it circled back to me liking Dusty, because he comes with that weapon. That's his gun.
Yeah, which is also weird.
Go for it, man. Take it away, Robbie.
Which is also weird because that he actually comes with this weapon. So pictured on the screen right now is the two main variants of the Famas, the original, the F1, which was I think chambered with a 25 round magazine, and then the eventual kind of like a bigger variant that they kind of like made a lot of improvements upon it, which is the G2, which comes with a more M16 style 30 round magazine. But but of course, off the bat, the strangest thing about this is that his original file card does not mention him having any expertise in the FAMAS. They very much say he's a qualified expert in M16, M14, the M60, and the M1911A1. So there's literally no mention of him actually being an expert in this thing. But it's the rifle he comes with, and it kind of makes sense as well because of the bullpup design, which places the firing grip is being in front of the breech and the instead of behind it. It makes for a more compact design. So you can still have a weapon that has that preserves the muzzle velocity, the range, and the ballistic effectiveness of a larger rifle, but in a smaller scale. So that it's more compact, it's lighter. He can kind of carry it around much easier in the desert. And it's been apparently it's been proven. It's been featured by the French army, as well as a lot of other forces across the world. I believe the Philippines is also one of the major nations that uses the FAMAS. But with the French, it's been used in the Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, the Iraq War, the Iraqi Civil War. So it's definitely proven itself over the years as being a very reliable desert weapon. Something interesting I didn't realize about this, even though it is chambered for 5.56 millimeter cartridges, the original version of it had to use a special stainless steel version of the cartridges, because the rifle itself couldn't take the standard brass casing version, which is what the NATO nations used, because of it would create what did it say, overpressure and case ruptures inside the Famas. So it was actually designed specifically to use the French variant of the ammo, which I found quite weird. But it's something which they fixed eventually. Well, made it more. They fixed it, but they kind of made it more generic in the second version, or in the G2 version. And if you're wondering, the name
opinion on that. Sorry, Rob,
the name literally just means assault rifle from the Saint Etienne weapon factory.
Very good. And it is FAMAS. The S isn't singular and plural.
No, it's right in there. So it's Fusil d'assaut de la Manufacture d'Armes de Saint Etienne.
Very good.
So with the S, obviously the E after the set. So Saint Etienne is part of the name. That's the S.
Is Dusty using the G1 or the G2 variant?
Well, I would say based off the way that his rifle is, the magazine is going in there, that actually he would be using the F1 version, because so the F1, so it would be the original version, because it's a straight mag and not a curved mag, like with the M16 version.
Right.
So they could make a lot of money off the proprietary ammo. Nice.
Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, unfortunately,
I'm very fond of the scaling of it. The scaling of his gun relative to the figure kind of make a mockery of other GI Joe weapons, because this is right in the pocket. It's
absolutely fantastic. It really does live up to the kind of like the compactness of it, or at least the reasoning why they did design it as a bullpup design. Obviously, it's meant to come with a little standy thing at the front. Unfortunately, I do not have that, but I'm pretty sure Stephen or Paul will be able to share that up for you. How cool it is.
I'd like to mention, name drop where I got mine from. It was after we did a Iconicon, which was a sort of a YouTube channel festival hosted by Retro Blasting and Analog Toys and Reclaimers.
Pop culture convention.
Absolutely.
Online
Tony
only.
from Analog Toys and I got talking about Dusty, the fact that, like, if ever we were to do a play motion and we were to get him to voice a character, he would have chosen Dusty. Well, it probably would now be Desert Rat. But anyway, we spoke about Dusty. I was like, I'll probably never have the bipod. He's like, well, I might be able to help you there, because I think he was completing his Dusty and similarly asked around and wound up getting a duplication. Like, he got one from Reclaimers. And he was like, I don't need two. Happy birthday, Steve. Very simple piece, but the fact that it is detachable, man, oh man, is the bane of all collectors' lives. However, a hack that, and I can't believe I didn't include it with yours, Rob, when I sent it your way, Marauder Inc.'s very first run of bipods fit Dusty's Famas.
Oh, wow.
It was probably intended that way. It was like they sized it so that it would be an adequate replacement for that. It's not identical. You're not going to like run into bootleg issues. It can't pass off for the original, but it does fit, and it is perfect. It does the job.
Much like Saint Etienne's machine gun shop. Very, very smart, forward thinking of them.
But Tony also spoke about, because we spoke about the Australian Armed Forces and the fact that they employ a bullpup style standard rifle. And he just said, I prefer the M4 in all matters, because a bullpup, yes, it has the advantage of a shorter length. So it's easy to get in and out of vehicles, perhaps, something that Dusty, I'm sure, would approve. But reloading a bullpup when it's under your elbow like that, behind your arm,
it can't be that easy.
It's
or
not as
intuitive.
awkward as a sort of a forward magazine.
Popping it
Anyway,
out.
what do I know? I ain't no gun nut, but you have
it's
it
always,
from the man's mouth.
It's always been an exceptionally popular weapon. I mean, because it has such a unique design. I mean, we've seen it as Paul mentioned, Metal Gear Solid. It's quite featured in that game. It is the gun of all of the enemy soldiers, or most of the enemy soldiers that you find in the first game on the PlayStation 1. And it's in tons of other media. Behind Enemy Lines, movie from the early 2000s, I believe. There are soldiers in there that use it. Other video games would be Rainbow Six Vegas. It is one of the weapons that you can equip and put, kind of like scope it out and do tons of cool shit with it. Army of Two, an early co-op game as well,
Yes.
I believe from Xbox 360. Also used it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow Never Dies apparently was in there on weapon racks. I don't think anyone picked one up, but obviously they put it in the background. They're like, "Oh, look at these cool weapons." Firefly surprised me actually. I was trying to find a screenshot of this, but in Firefly, the sci-fi TV show, the main character actually does use one at one point, which I would imagine would be in the
Mel.
flashbacks. Yeah, Mal uses it,
Oh,
which
wow.
I think it would be in the flashbacks though of the war, the kind of the brown coats war.
I might be misremembering, but I swear it's a Famas that is used in the future war segments of Terminator 2. Or Terminator 1.
Ooh.
It's
Terminator
either the
Dark
Famas
Fate,
or the
apparently.
The Stayer.
I know
But
that.
I'm thinking it's a Famas. I'm thinking it's a Famas.
Yeah, it's one of the two.
might-
I'll have to rewatch. You've just
But
pinned
it's
something
literally
my
in
memory.
all media because it's such a unique looking weapon. I mean, it just
Sure.
looks
Very
interesting,
sexy.
Like it does. Yeah, you see it
So
and you're
much
like, that's
so
the
that the Core by Leonard did a copy of it shamelessly. They just used exactly the same sculpt, but they lopped off the top hand grip. The top rail is gone, if you can imagine that.
Well, I suppose
obviously no fireball.
easier to produce. But
Oh, and
real
no,
ugly.
I mean, what's so excellent about this weapon is they even included the charging handle. I mean, you've got a broken toy if that's missing, but it's right there, above the, just between the top rail and the gun,
Yeah.
the gun itself. That's where you pull it back to bring.
I
the
imagine
round
that
up.
being an irritating feature on that gun. Because if you're holding
having
it
to reach in between there
and
and
you
there.
have to do that's a semi-micro motor skill. You have to get your fingers in there to pull the
Right.
charging rail. That's
Apparently,
a
I mean,
little-
it was
that to me is
designed to
irritating.
be usable with gloves. It's very easy to use. And also, you could equip grenades to it. It was a rifle grenade launching
Yes.
mechanism. So you can fire
Bayonet.
them
Like a little rocket.
bayonet,
Pop a
you can put
rocket
it
on the
there.
end.
And obviously, because
Yeah.
of the rail at the top, a large variety of scopes and optics can be used with the rifle.
I feel
So
like
it's a good
it's
choice.
super.
I
It's a
didn't,
good
I
choice.
didn't get far enough in my research, but something tells me that on 3D Joe's, there's maybe a sound clip or something of Ron Rudat saying that he was very much inspired by French Foreign Legion in Dusty's design. Because
Confusing him.
America hadn't started fighting in the desert just yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I was gonna.
but by having a 1985 heritage, this guy predates Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
Yeah,
So
he
you need
is-
to turn to the other nations of the world to see what like a desert dedicated fighting force would look
When
like.
the admirals and the generals or whatever in the army and the Navy, when they're discussing what they were going to be doing in their wars in the desert, one of them was like, "We need to look like this guy. He's the man that we need to look like. He's perfect for warfare. Did you read that issue of GI Joe? Base all our missions on this man. He's the real
But-
deal."
So, Steve, once upon a time, I seem to recall a conversation you and I had, either on the podcast or when you got your Dusty figure, where you did mention the French Foreign Legion as being an inspiration, based on some research that you had done. And we sort of thought about we had this thought that maybe he had served with them, that
Oh.
Dusty had served with them maybe beforehand, before the Americans had joined that conflict, or maybe he was working with them as an attaché or something. I don't know,
Might be like
some
an
kind of
advisor or
exchange,
something to help
or
them.
or
get
just
adjusted.
or there for training, or there to be trained in specialization or something to train U.S. troops for when they. So there was that little bit of headcanon. I seem to
Dusty's
remember a
uniform is
conversation like that.
the camo on it is not quite the choc chip of
Yeah.
American Desert Campaign. It does owe a lot to the French Foreign Legion desert uniforms of the time. And if you are watching the video presentation, I think I have an example of that camo style on screen at the moment with much bigger brown sections. It also has sort of
It breaks up the body. I mean, there's more variety in the striping.
It's like
The
John
splotches.
type thing.
And yes, I think if you do go to 3D Joe's website, you will see a creative commentary with Ron Rudat. And Let's see if I can get the audio to play through my microphone right now. Why?
Ooh,
the hell
you sure we
not?
won't get a copyright strike for that one? I hope. I hope we don't.
Oh, I'll risk
Yeah,
it.
we gotta be.
If Carson
we have to
gets
risk
the,
it.
the revenue from this video, all 20 cents of it, he's welcome to it.
So we're saying Ron Rudat, and that is
Civil War Havelock on him. A lot of collectors don't know what Havelocks are. During the Civil War and Indian Wars, they wore a thing that came off the back of their hat, and it protected their neck from the sun. And then I gave them just a modern day, at that time, weapon. And we couldn't put a lot of camo on these guys. I mean, it would have been nice to have maybe two, maybe sometimes three different colors, but cost-wise, we couldn't do it. We had to go with one color or no camo at all.
Gosh, I misremembered. He was mainly talking about the Havelock being a Civil War era
Thing, yeah.
innovation, which speaks to Ron's passions because for many years he was a Civil War recreations guy. He probably just still does the odd-
Reenaction.
Yeah, reenactments.
Yeah.
That's it. Mm.
absolutely
But-
wild.
But it's cool because you did mention like Dusty's uniform is more European-ish, and the Famas is a European weapon. It's not a weapon used by the U.S. forces, at least not to my knowledge, as Rob kind of pointed out now as well. And also, to be fair, it uses a proprietary ammo for the F1, so nobody's going to adopt that unless they are buying all the ammo from a single source. So that's probably why they had to make the F2 to make it more marketable. But anyway, let's not go into that. That's not this conversation. What I did want to mention is Sideshow did an outstanding figure of Dusty, which I don't have any images of here, but that Dusty,
Where did he come
toy,
from,
I
Paul?
remember he came from very far away. Stephen found him. What country was it exactly that you were in at the time for that one?
Singapore, pow, pow.
That was in Singapore. And
Back when they used to have the toy markets every Sunday at the China Central Mall. That was the best.
And Steve sent that. Yeah, Steve sent that off to me, via a friend and a colleague at the time. Very cool actor, by the way, as well.
Anybody heading back to
And,
Joburg? Because I ain't.
Yeah, and he
Get this
and
toy to my friend.
I lovingly received this toy, and yeah, man, I love it. I love the heck out of it. And something about the Sideshow figure that was quite remarkable is that a lot of the Sideshow figures do come with a low vis versions of insignia, patches, and all that.
Mhm.
And the Sideshow team had actually done like a cool version where they were red, and that sort of echoes the vintage, having the red flag and all that kind of
Clever.
stuff. That was very cool.
That's
yeah,
very
so,
cool.
yeah.
Do you guys have any
And-
issues getting the gun into their hands? Are you terrified of breaking your thumbs? Or you're like,
Too
slam it in
terrified.
there, man? You are
Too
terrified.
terrified, man.
Okay.
Mine always holds his gun like this because I'm too terrified to like put the gun in there and then rectify it properly.
Man up,
Popping off
Paul.
the-
That's all I can say. Man up.
No,
He
I
cradles
think
it so nicely.
he does actually. I think it looks good. It looks good in his hands.
Yes, boy.
And then
Oh yeah.
Robbie's fearless. you go.
and then that is awesome. And then you got this Dusty the check. If you guys look
Version
carefully,
3.
Gosh.
eagle-eyed viewers will notice that my Dusty's one grip is a little bit smaller than the other.
Oh my word.
A little.
He's got a funny little right hand.
So now
Oh.
this Dusty is definitely left-handed for gun use. Yeah.
Yep. In 1991, Dusty basically became a Street
Jean-Claude Van
Fighter.
Dusty.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Welcome
love
to
this
our
version
desert.
of him though.
It's very
Absolutely
hot
love
out
them.
there, but I am bringing the heat to this battle.
Sun's out,
Ah.
guns out, dudes. Whereas original Dusty covered up as much flesh as possible.
Yeah,
This
he
other
understood.
Dusty, Lord
I'm in the
love me.
desert.
Why isn't he topless? I mean, he's just.
He might as well
Seen.
be.
This guy's making the sun burn. I just hate his red hair. Like I have nothing against redheads or anything like that.
Do you
I
know
just
what
don't
his
like it
hair
on the
color
figure.
is in the original? He might always have been red. You don't know
Well,
that.
Yeah, because we can't see his eyebrows, but I assume he's a blonde because the model sheet.
Oh,
I mean, there was a model sheet created for him for the Sunbow cartoon, which tells me that he was initially blonde. I actually think this figure was destined to be blonde, but then they were like, "There's just too much yellow on the figure," so they just.
I feel
Make
like
the
that
hair
was
red.
meant to be some sort of version of Duke, like Desert Duke or something.
I feel like in 1991,
Desert Falcon.
GI Joe was hard up, and they needed to make extra money by like basically outsourcing or getting in trainee hairdressers to practice on the Joes. That's the only explanation I can come up with for so many. I mean, low light,
Wild
like
stuff
becoming-
going on in the 90s.
having black hair all of a sudden. Come
Oh,
on,
but he looks so good though.
does he now?
Um,
Guys, I think
I
we
think he does.
can cap it off on this episode, this toy focus and character focus, by just saying Dusty, an underrated
Dusty's
gem.
great.
Hell yeah.
He's beyond great. He's in my top 10 in the lower half. He's a 5 out of 5 figure all the way for me. Gentlemen, sing out your numbers.
Absolutely.
And Steve hates me when I do this, but I have to throw this in there. It's a little bit of an Easter egg. In the file card for Dusty version 3, he is qualified to fly the Locust and the Retaliator. Just putting that out there. He's got extra skills. Okay, and with that, I'm going to. Are we giving him an out of 5 score, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Oh,
How
I
many
can't give this guy
sandstorms?
I can't give him anything less than 4 sandstorms.
Nothing less than 4. I'm definitely going to give him
Nothing less
5.
than 4 sandstorms.
I think for sure. I mean, he is an unsung hero. I mean, like, but if you have kind of paid attention, you've read a lot of comics, you've seen him in the cartoons, you will hopefully have realized that he's a proper superhero. He's a real G.I. Joe. And hopefully this will, if you haven't realized that yet, this episode will help you realize that and bring him to light and help you discover your, Dusty.
Paul?
Your Dusty love.
Why is he not 5 out of 5?
Ooh.
You
He can't hold his hand.
No, it's not that. It's the Tiger Force version's fault. Okay. But Dusty's face sculpt freaks me out a little. And he does look like a certain parliamentary leader of another country. I don't want to say too much, but he does look a little like rhymes with Rutan.
Does he? I don't.
Does look a
Oh
little
God, yeah, actually.
He kind of does. And that has, I want to say that has always bugged me, but his face sculpt has always bugged me a little. It's always looked a bit like Oldosaurus for a young man's face. And and then also the fact that he kind of shares a bit of a similar likeness with.
I think they based
That guy.
the real life guy on Dusty, actually.
God damn
There
you,
we go.
Just
Paul.
saying.
Sorry.
The KGB manufactured him after they saw this action figure coming out of
Mm-hmm.
the liberal West.
The
He's so
Americas.
scary, especially his Tiger Force version. He's so scary. We should.
No, not the Germans.
Right. Whatever. I don't do the accents. I do the talking and the normal language. But anyway,
Well, we're wrapping up
554.
on another
close
very
enough.
enjoyable episode of GI Joburg. For me personally, I mean, I love talking about my favorite toys, and this is way,
Very
way,
cool.
way up there. As always, we thank our patrons. All 2 pages of them. Amazing.
You are.
Amazing.
Our
Amazing.
GI Joburg members. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everyone
Love you all.
listening or watching this podcast.
Bless.
You're the reason we're here, the reason we do this thing. If you'd like to show love or buy one of our shirts, feel free to do that.
Absolutely.
are
Or just comment below.
awesome
Click the
designs.
little like button. Even that's cool. But if you want to own a cool GI Joe inspired shirt, please head over to our Teespring. But thanks for listening this far. Love
Oh,
all of
yeah.
you.
We dusted it off all right.
Whoa.
Yo,
I've dusted
Joe.
myself off.
Berg.